Today we're going to talk about starting your own plants from seed. Let's get going. Planting your own seedlings gives you a lot more flexibility on planting times. Maybe you want to be a little bit early in the spring or later in the fall. Productivity, give you whole sorts of different levels of productivity for your produce. A raise of flavor that you just don't have access to, and different pest and disease resistance than you can find in anything in your local greenhouse. So, but you might have some questions. You might be ready to take that step, but you might have some questions. What are the best ways to do that? There are no perfect prescribed ways, and other people will do it differently than some of the ways I'm going to show you. But the point is just that you take that step of just jumping in and starting growing stuff for yourself and learning through that process. That process itself is what will guide you. And you might see some things here today that say, oh, that's a good idea, I'm going to try that. But the ultimate test is your own experience, and let that guide you through your process. It's a wonderful journey of growth, of growing plants, and growing them from seed is just another wonderful piece of that journey. When it comes to choosing your containers, use whatever you have and can afford. Yogurt containers, cottage cheese containers, paper pots, peat pots, whatever works for you and whatever you can afford. Just if they're plastic, just make sure you poke holes in the bottom. Holes that actually are big enough to leak out water. Experiment and let those experiences be your guide until you settle on something you like. To explain our own personal journey and why we use what we use, in case it's helpful to you. Not to be prescriptive, don't let anybody tell you for any reason that you have to do it any certain way. But we found that the yogurt containers like this are the ones that are, the small, that are like a little bit smaller than this. We just found they're a little bit too small. Yogurt containers that are this size were too big and used too much planting mix. The ones that were too small, the roots got root bound. This is about the right size, but who eats that much sour cream? And cottage cheese containers, just like the yogurt containers, were a little bit too big. Then moved into, well, let's try larger containers. And not these, but just as an example. And we'd plant and plan to cut the soils out. And a lot of gardeners will do this. They'll actually plant in a flat and then cut the soil out. When we did that, we found that their roots, by the time we were transplanting them, spread so far that we were cutting off a significant portion of them. Many times, much more than half their roots, just to get them out of there, even though we had decent sized blocks for each one. So we moved on to try this beautiful little pot maker and thought it was awesome. And at the same time, we're trying fiber pots, similar to peat pots, where you just put this in water and it fluffs up. But we tried these fiber pots, still have them, because we never used them. What happened was, as they grew, after we used them a couple times, we never used them again. As the plants grew, they're supposed to be biodegradable. They are, in a matter of time. But after the first season, we looked and it seems like those plants are stunted. What's going on? And so when the plants were all harvested and done at the end of the season, dug up the roots and saw what was going on. The roots made their way through this, but it significantly restricted them. And so inside there was just this massive root ball. And it basically, it made them root bound, but the roots that made it through never grew to the size they normally would be. So we thought maybe paper pots would work better, because the roots would just grow to the end and stop, and that would all solve all of that. But it ended up working just like the fiber pots. The paper doesn't quite break down all the way, even by planting time, and it ends up making them root bound. So the next year we tried, what if we start with these and then we just kind of peel these off before we plant it? And there aren't roots sticking out, but they had just started to make their way in and ended up tearing tons of roots just trying to get the paper off of the root ball. So that didn't work. And so finally, this friend of ours, friend Dave Moosoff, who's been using these for years, we just broke down and said, we're gonna get these. At the time, I think we got them on sale at a garden center for like 30 cents a pot. But they're 3.5 by 3. They're about a perfect size for what we do and what we use, and they're about $1 a pot. So if you're gonna have 20 seedlings for 20 bucks, you have, if you break them or they get knocked over in a windstorm like they did today, you lose a pot. But you know, if you don't drop them or they don't get blown over, they last forever. They're perfect for water, and they're really, since they're reusable, relatively inexpensive over time. But last year we did 13 experimental beds and had to do all the same vegetables and fruits in every bed. And for example, we planted 3 pepper plants in every bed. So easy math, 39 pepper plants and 13 tomato plants. And you know, all of the other, we did not have enough terracotta pots. We needed another solution. And we'd been wanting to move into soil blocks and try soil blocks for a while. But we had these pots and never really needed to. But in researching other stuff for the garden book, came across people were saying soil blocks are now obsolete, that now wind strip trays are taking the place of soil blocks. And if you're not familiar with soil blocks, I don't have any here, I wish I had to show you, but you can get a soil block maker, and you usually make 4 at a time. You get your soil really wet, and the block maker compresses the soil, so it's just a block of soil sitting there, no pot whatsoever. And the theory on it, the roots grow out, they get right to the edge, and they're just surrounded by air, they stop. So you take that and plant it in the ground, they just take right off. This is supposed to do the same thing. Open bottoms, and with just a little bit sticking out on there, so that soil doesn't fall through, and they're tapered toward the bottom for the same reason. But then they have slits in the sides. I'm not sure if you can see this. They have slits in the sides, on each side. So as roots start to grow around, if they were trying to become root bound, they grow and they come to an air space, they come to an air gap, and they stop wrapping around, and they don't get root bound. We may as well try them. We have these nice other handy trays that we bought somewhere else. They're actually really super easy to fill. That's their claim to fame, as opposed to soil blocks can be messy and a little troublesome. The claim to fame for these is it's super easy to fill a tray. That's it. That's 72 planting spots, just like that. And you don't compact it in there. That's the other thing. It's not compacted soil. And all you do is just lightly lift it and tap it. I actually didn't use the correct one here. I'm supposed to be this one. And you have 72 planting spots that aren't compacted. As the soil settles down, you just add a little bit more if you need it, but that's it. You're ready to go and ready to plant in there. Our planting in these last year, the terracotta pots are the cream of the crop. I don't think you can really find better, or so I thought. Our peppers that came out of these last year took off miraculously when we put them in the ground. It's like they're put there by the hand of God. So I'm a believer in wind strip trays. For your own purposes, choose whatever you can afford and whatever you prefer. This is just our journey in case it helps inform yours. Just experiment. We experiment on it all the time. Let those experiments and those experiences be your guide, whichever direction you want to go. And you will find whatever kind of pots you prefer and enjoy it and love it. The point isn't what pot you use. The point is that you garden and love gardening. And these are just some examples in case they help you. When it comes to your soil mixture for your seedlings, there's only one hard and fast rule: not garden soil. The only reason is all the wonderful microbial life that you want there in your garden can go awry a little bit when your seedlings are just under lights and not in sunlight and in that wet environment for your seedlings. Instead, all gardeners have their favorites. Some use regular old potting mix, but use potting mix. If you do that, use potting mix and not topsoil. But every gardener has their favorite, and they're all good. Like I said, potting mix works fine, but some gardeners think it's just a little bit too rich for their seedlings. What we do is equal parts potting soil and peat moss. There's some peat moss already in that potting mix, but basically we're cutting the potting mix with peat moss a little bit. For this is going to be not quite the right amount, but for every about 2.5 gallons of those two combined, we add about a pint of sand and a little bit of vermiculite if I have it on hand. And just mix that up. Whatever mix you choose is fine, and I'm sure it'll be great. And just, compare notes with other gardeners. It's actually one of our favorite pastimes. In the long run, it doesn't really matter what pot you use or which soil you use, as long as they work for you. The point is that you grow, and you have a chance to garden, and you have a chance to grow plants, and that's the entire point. The point is to learn and grow, and to stay open to growing. And as always, check out our Twitter and Instagram. We're using Twitter as a garden calendar reminder. And our Instagram, pretty much just all the most beautiful photos Jen finds in the garden, coupled with some of the ones I just find timely for when certain parts of the season. By the same token, check out our website for much more information on all of these topics. The website and accompanying book, like these videos, are an attempt to restore and pass on what used to be our birthright, the generationally passed on knowledge of how to grow our own food. I've been dismayed my whole life when watching gardeners struggle for lack of knowledge that used to be passed down so freely it was taken for granted. At their core, these generational secrets to success communicated 3 absolutely critical and 3 accompanying fundamentals that allow us, as gardeners, to grow amazingly healthy and productive produce. It's time we restore that birthright. Also included on the website are a plethora of other little secrets to success, from starting your own seedlings to how to use mulch, from seed and plant selection to dealing with sod. We hope you enjoy them, learn from them, and pass them on. Happy gardening.